Travel along, Catholic pilgrims, for 1 year as we read through St. Faustina's diary. Join me, Amy Thomas, each day for a short reading out of the diary which brought us a deeper understanding of Christ's divine mercy. Welcome, Catholic pilgrims, to day 227 of our readings from St. Faustina's diary. I was on the internet the other day and just kind of browsing through social media, as we all tend to do. And what struck me was that there were a lot of people who were talking about how they were very fearful, how they weren't feeling okay inside. Mentally, they were just super anxious and disturbed and very scared and sorrowful, and it just seemed like there was a lot of unrest. Interior unrest. And so when I was reading through Sister Faustina's writings today, she was talking about the interior life and, how things on the outside can affect our interior life. If you've lost your job, if someone has died, your family has disowned you, any of those types of things can cause your interior life to be unsettled, and for you to be depressed and anxious and hurt, sad. But then there's also other things that come from within that disrupt our interior life. And we're going to talk about those today in Notebook 3, numbers 1094 through 1099. April 17th. Today, during a catechetical lecture by Father Theodore, I was given a confirmation of what I had understood interiorly and lived by for quite some time, namely, that if a soul loves God sincerely and is intimately united with Him, then even though such a soul may be living in the midst of difficult external circumstances, nothing can disturb its interior life, and in the midst of corruption, it can remain pure and unsullied. Because the great love of God gives it strength for battle, and God also protects in a special way, even in a miraculous way, a soul that loves Him sincerely. When one day God gave me the inner knowledge that I had never lost my innocence, and that despite all dangers in which I found myself, He Himself had been guarding me so that the virginity of my soul and heart would remain intact. I spent the day in fervent interior thanksgiving. I thanked God that He had been pleased to protect me from evil, and also for this, that I had found favor in His eyes, that He Himself had given me assurance of this. And a few years later, He deigned to confirm me in this grace, and since that time I have not experienced the rebellion of the senses against the soul. I have written this down in greater detail elsewhere in my diary. As often as I recall this inconceivable grace, a fresh flame of love and gratitude to God bursts forth from my heart, and this same love leads me to complete forgetfulness of self. Since that time, I have been living under the virginal cloak of the Mother of God. She has been guarding me and instructing me. I am quite at peace, close to her immaculate heart. Because I am so weak and inexperienced, I nestle like a little child close to her heart. Although God has confirmed me in this virtue, I am, however, constantly on the watch and fear even my own shadow, but this only because I have come to love God intensely. This grace from God was given to me precisely because I was the weakest of all people. This is why the Almighty has surrounded me with His special mercy. There are numerous things externally that can upset us internally. Like I said in the beginning, death of a loved one, loss of a job, having to move across the world, just all kinds of different circumstances that are out of our control can upset our interior life and cause all kinds of emotions in us. They can make us super frustrated or angry, a lot of angst, depressed, sad, uncertain. Gosh, there's just so many emotions. And there are also external circumstances that can make us very happy and cause a lot of joy in our lives, obviously. But there are a lot of ways in which our internal health affects our internal life. The things that go on inside our own heads that affect our internal life. And I just wanted to go through a few that I picked out that really cause a lot of just unrest inside of our souls, in our interior life, that are many times within our control. The first one I thought of was having too much fear. You know, fear is not in and of itself a bad thing. It's good that we have some fear because otherwise we would do really, really stupid things. And we might take too much risk in our lives that put us in danger, like serious danger, and, snuff out our lives too soon. But there are also times when just too much fear grips our life. And it comes from inside of us. Now, obviously, there are things outside of ourselves that can make us very fearful. The way people talk to us, how we've been raised, the media, those things can all make us very fearful. And those are external things. But inside, what goes on in our own heads can make us too fearful. And that causes a lot of anxiety when we live our lives with too much fear. And I really think that when we live our lives with too much fear, there is a lack of trust in God. And I say this as somebody who struggles with this. There are many, many times when I really have to talk to myself and remind myself that I'm being too fearful, that I have to let my children live and I have to live myself. I cannot, protect my family and myself from every little bad thing that could possibly ever happen. And I can't live my life in fear. And a lot of that just comes from my own head. And so when I get too fearful, I get very anxious and it causes a lot of unrest. The next thing is a preoccupation with self. When we are too focused on ourselves and all we can do is worry about ourselves and what we want and what we need, and I'm not getting this, I don't have that, I need more people to like me, I need more people to praise me. When we go down that path of a preoccupation of self, it just does not do good things for our interior health. It just doesn't. What does great things for our interior health is when we reach out to other people and give of ourselves. So when we find ourselves too preoccupied with ourselves, that's when we know it's time to reevaluate. One thing that I often do is I'll have pity parties for myself. Oh, this person is just not doing what, I want them to do. And because of that, it makes me feel really bad. And nobody likes me. Everybody's always criticizing me. And I have this big old pity party. And when I do that, my interior life just tanks. But when I am more realistic and stop with the pity party, I have a greater interior health life. I'm way more rational and clear and reasonable than when I have pity parties. Another one is lack of prayer time. If we are not praying with God and spending that time with Him, our interior life will suffer for it. Recently, since I've moved from Turkey and there's all the moving and getting settled and having the jet lag and, traveling around the country to visit family and friends that we haven't seen for a year, I haven't had my normal prayer time because normally I get up in the morning around 5:30 and I go out and pray in my rocking chair. But my rocking chair is somewhere on a boat in the Atlantic Ocean right now. And I haven't had that. And so I can tell. I can really tell that because my normal routine is really shifted right now and I'm got to get back into it, my interior life is suffering for it. And it's really hard when you're traveling and moving around and you don't have any furniture and you're jet lagged to get on that routine. And I know it'll come back. It's just right now I can feel the unrest. So having a solid prayer time is really important to our interior life. Another one is worrying too much about other people's thoughts. Now, I know that kind of sounds like an exterior thing, but a lot of times it's interior because we get it in our head that people are thinking things about us that they're probably not even thinking about us. And even if they are, well, who cares? We have to stop taking so much stock in what other people think. Because when we worry too much about what other people think, oftentimes it does not allow us to live out our faith life in the right way because we're worried about offending people, or we're worried about looking too pious, or we're worried about being a holy roller, or whatever label somebody slaps on us for living out our faith life in a way that's meaningful. And when we worry too much about what other people think, it gets in our head and we start having these kind of self-defeating thoughts, and that causes us to suffer interiorly. And another one is not knowing your purpose. Now, it takes some time to figure that out. Not everybody turns 18 and knows exactly what God's purpose for their life is. It does take time. However, if you've lost sight of the fact that you're a child of God and that He has put you here for a reason, that will cause unrest. If you don't even recognize that basic foundational aspect of your faith life, you will feel just empty inside almost. And so realizing, one, that God has put you here for a reason, and two, if you don't know what your purpose is, right now is the time to start diving in to that through prayer and scripture, maybe a spiritual director, and just taking time to think about it. Journaling, all those types of things are really good. But when we don't know what our purpose is, we're going to feel interiorly out of sorts because God has put us here for a reason. And when we're not doing that, we are not going to feel good inside. We're going to feel like something's off, something's missing. I should be doing something. I may not know what it is, but when we don't even try to look for it and we just are like, well, I'm just here and I'm just going to live my life and do my thing and whatever, it will not go well for our interior health. The last one I thought about was not living out God's will. So let's say you figured out what God has put you here for. You know what your purpose is, but you're not living it out. That will cause massive amounts of unrest in our souls. And we will feel just not adequate. We won't feel like ourselves. We'll feel like we're just floundering on an ocean and with no compass, no guidance, no navigation to where we're going when we do not live out God's will for our lives. And so those are just a few of the things that I thought of. And the reason why I thought about them is because of what Sister Faustina says here about the interior life. She says, I was given a confirmation of what I had understood interiorly and lived by for quite some time, namely, that if a soul loves God sincerely and is intimately united with Him, then even though such a soul may be living in the midst of difficult external circumstances, nothing can disturb its interior life. And so, being intimately united with God is that prayer time, that seeking of His will for your life, that knowing what your purpose is, or at least trying to figure out what your purpose is. When we're intimately united with Christ in those ways, nothing can disturb our interior life. And if there's difficult external circumstances, if we are solid in the interior things, if we are thinking good about ourselves, we're not living with too much fear, we're connected to God through prayer, we aren't worried too much about what other people think. We do need to worry some because sometimes people can shed light on something that we need to change. But knowing what our purpose is, seeking out God's will, if we're doing those things, when external circumstances happen that are difficult for us, it's not going to totally disrupt our interior life. And we will be able to get through it much better than if our interior life is also in shambles. And so we have to work really hard to keep our interior life healthy. And it does take work. It's not like you wave a magic wand and, your interior life is a-okay and everything's great. It does take work, just as anything in life takes work that's worth doing. So that is all for today, Catholic Pilgrims. I'll see you back here for day 228. And until then, live the faith boldly and travel well.